In the heart of New York City, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and dreams were both made and broken, there lived a man named Alex. He wasn't just any man. He was one of those people you'd see on magazine covers or hear about in business podcasts. A self-made millionaire, Alex had climbed his way to the top with sheer hard work and determination. His company, a tech giant, employed thousands of people, and his name carried weight wherever it went. But behind all the glitz and glamour, Alex felt something missing deep inside him. Money could buy fancy cars, luxurious penthouses, and expensive vacations, but it couldn't fill the void he felt when he tucked his twin kids into bed every night. The twins, a boy and a girl, were 8 years old, full of energy, curiosity, and laughter. Yet they grew up in a world where everything came easily to them because of their father's success. And that worried Alex. He wanted more for his children than just material comforts. He wanted them to experience life as most other kids did, forming genuine friendships, learning the value of effort, and understanding what it meant to connect with people beyond appearances. But how could he teach them these lessons when everyone around them only saw dollar signs? One evening, Alex attended a charity gala. It was another event filled with polished smiles and polite small talk. As he moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, someone caught his eye. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes or dripping with jewelry like many others in the room. Instead, she wore a simple dress, her hair tied back neatly, and her warm smile stood out among the sea of forced grins. Her name was Clara. When Alex introduced himself, she didn't bat an eyelid at his title or achievements. Instead, she talked about her own life, how she worked 2 jobs to support her teenage daughter, how she volunteered at a local community center, and how much she loved helping others. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just honesty and kindness. Something about Clara struck a chord within Alex. For the first time in years, he felt like he was speaking to someone who truly saw him, not his bank balance. An idea began forming in his mind, an experiment of sorts. What if he stepped out of his billionaire persona and met Clara as just Alex, a regular guy struggling to make ends meet? Would she still like him then? More importantly, would his kids benefit from such an interaction? The following week, Alex set his plan into motion. He borrowed an old car from a friend, dressed casually in jeans and a plain t-shirt, and told his twins they were going on a fun outing. They visited a cozy little diner known for its greasy burgers and thick milkshakes. It wasn't the kind of place Alex usually frequented, but today it felt perfect. When Clara arrived, she greeted them with a bright smile that lit up the room. The twins warmed up to her almost instantly. She asked them questions about school, their favorite cartoons, and whether they preferred chocolate or vanilla milkshakes. Her easygoing nature put everyone at ease, including Alex, who found himself relaxing into the role of a regular dad. Clara shared stories about her own daughter, describing how independent and spirited she was, despite their challenging circumstances. Alex listened intently, marveling at how different this conversation felt compared to the ones he usually had at high-profile events. Here, there was no pressure to impress, no need to prove anything. Just 2 parents bonding over shared experiences. As the evening progressed, Clara suggested taking the kids to a nearby park so they could burn off some energy. The group walked together under the soft glow of streetlights, laughing as the kids chased each other around. Alex watched Clara interact with his children, her patience and warmth making him realize how much they needed someone like her in their lives. For the first time in years, Alex felt a sense of peace. Pretending to be broke might have been a gamble, but it seemed to be paying off. Little did he know, however, that this seemingly perfect evening was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about trust, honesty, and relationships. The evening at the diner had gone better than Alex could have ever imagined. Clara's warmth and genuine nature made the entire outing feel effortless. The kids laughed, played, and bonded with her like they hadn't done with anyone else in a long time. Alex couldn't help but notice how natural it all felt, how easy it was to just be himself without worrying about impressing anyone or living up to his reputation. For once, he wasn't the millionaire CEO. He was just a dad trying to give his kids a fun night out. After finishing their milkshakes, Clara suggested heading over to the park nearby. The kids seem full of energy, she said with a smile. Why don't we let them run around for a bit? Alex agreed, and soon the group was walking down the quiet streets, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. The air was cool, and the sound of distant traffic blended with the chirping of crickets. At the park, the twins wasted no time. They darted toward the swings, laughing as they pushed each other higher and higher. Clara joined in, helping them take turns on the slide, and even joining a game of tag. Watching her play with his kids, Alex realized how much joy she brought into their lives. She didn't treat them like they were special because of who their father was. She treated them like any other kids, and that meant the world to him. As the evening wore on, Alex found himself opening up more than he usually did. He told Clara about the challenges of being a single parent after his wife passed away years ago. He spoke about the pressure he felt to provide not just financially, but emotionally for his kids. Clara listened intently, nodding along and sharing stories of her own struggles as a single mom. Her teenage daughter, she explained, had taught her the importance of resilience and finding strength in tough times. For Alex, this conversation was refreshing. In his usual circle, people rarely talked about real struggles. Conversations revolved around investments, mergers, and industry trends, not personal hardships or heartfelt moments. But here, sitting on a park bench while the kids played, Alex felt a sense of connection he hadn't experienced in years. Clara wasn't trying to impress him or gain anything from their interaction. She simply wanted to get to know him, and that made all the difference. But just as Alex began to relax and enjoy the moment, disaster struck. While playing tag, one of the twins accidentally bumped into a man sitting on a nearby bench. The man's phone slipped from his hand and hit the ground, its screen shattering into a spiderweb of cracks. The man looked up, clearly annoyed, and held out his hand expectantly. Alex immediately stepped forward, ready to apologize and offer compensation. He reached into his pocket to pull out some cash, but instead of pulling out bills, his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. It was his sleek black credit card embossed with the logo of his company. His heart sank as he realized what he'd done. In his rush to appear normal, he'd forgotten to leave the card at home. Clara's eyes widened as she saw the card. At first, confusion flickered across her face, but then recognition dawned. Her expression hardened as she pieced everything together. "Wait a minute," she said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You're that Alex, the CEO of Hawthorne Tech?" Alex froze, caught red-handed. There was no denying it now. The jig was up. He opened his mouth to explain, to tell her why he'd pretended to be someone else, but Clara didn't give him a chance. Grabbing her daughter's hand, she turned and walked away without another word. The twins, sensing that something was wrong, ran back to their father. "Dad, why is she leaving?" one of them asked, tugging at his sleeve. Alex didn't have an answer. All he could do was watch as Clara disappeared into the night, taking with her the warmth and laughter that had filled the evening just moments before. On the drive home, the car was silent except for the occasional sniffle from the twins. They had grown fond of Clara during their short time together, and seeing her storm off had left them confused and upset. "Did we do something wrong?" one of them asked quietly. Alex shook his head, guilt weighing heavily on his chest. "No, sweethearts," he said softly. "This one's on me." That night, as Alex tucked the kids into bed, he replayed the events in his mind. He knew he'd messed up big time. Pretending to be someone he wasn't might have seemed harmless at first, but it had cost him dearly. Clara's trust was broken, and earning it back wouldn't be easy. Still, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, Alex resolved to make things right. He owed it not only to Clara, but also to his kids, who deserved to learn the value of honesty and accountability over the next few days. Alex tried reaching out to Clara multiple times. He called, texted, and even sent a handwritten note apologizing for his actions, but every attempt went unanswered. Clara had built walls around herself, unwilling to let him back in. Each rejection stung, but Alex refused to give up. He knew he needed to prove himself not through words, but through actions. Desperate to show Clara that he was sincere, Alex decided to step out of his comfort zone. He began volunteering at the community center where Clara worked part-time. At first, she avoided him, keeping her distance whenever he came around. But Alex didn't let that discourage him. He showed up week after week, teaching coding workshops to underprivileged kids and organizing fundraisers for local families in need. His persistence eventually paid off. One day, as Alex helped set up chairs for an event, Clara approached him. Hesitantly, "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her arms crossed defensively. Alex took a deep breath before responding. "Because I want to show you that I'm not the person I pretended to be," he said earnestly. "I'm sorry for lying to you. I never meant to hurt you or your daughter. I wanted to connect with someone who saw me for who I am, not for what I have." Clara studied him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. Finally, she sighed. "It's going to take more than apologies to fix this," she said firmly. "If you really mean what you're saying, then prove it. Be honest with me from now on, no more games." Alex nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you," he said simply. "You won't regret giving me another chance." From that day forward, Alex kept his promise. He stopped hiding behind his wealth and status, choosing instead to focus on building a genuine relationship with Clara. Their conversations became deeper, their interactions more meaningful. Slowly but surely, Clara began to lower her guard, allowing herself to trust him again. Through these shared experiences, Alex discovered something he hadn't anticipated. True happiness didn't come from money or power. It came from connecting with others on a human level, from being vulnerable, authentic, and real. And as he watched his kids form a bond with Clara and her daughter, he realized that this was the lesson he'd been searching for all along. Alex knew he had a long road ahead of him. Clara's forgiveness wasn't going to come easily, and he didn't expect it to. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild, and Alex was willing to put in the effort. He started showing up consistently at the community center where Clara worked. At first, his presence made her uncomfortable. She kept her distance, speaking only when necessary and avoiding eye contact. But Alex didn't let that discourage him. He understood that earning back her trust would require patience and genuine action. Every Saturday morning, Alex arrived at the community center ready to help. He began by teaching coding workshops to kids from low-income families. It was something he loved doing anyway, sharing his knowledge and seeing young minds light up with curiosity, but now it felt different. This wasn't just about giving back. It was about proving to Clara that he was more than the wealthy CEO she'd seen on magazine covers. He wanted her to see the real him, the man who cared about people, who valued hard work, and who believed in making a difference. The kids in the workshop quickly warmed up to him. They called him Mr. A and eagerly raised their hands whenever he asked a question. One boy, in particular, stood out. He was shy at first, hesitant to participate, but Alex encouraged him gently. By the end of the session, the boy was grinning ear to ear as he successfully coded a simple game. Watching moments like these reminded Alex why he'd fallen in love with technology in the first place. It had the power to change lives. Clara noticed the impact Alex was having. She couldn't deny how much the kids enjoyed his classes or how dedicated he seemed to be. Still, she remained cautious. Every time Alex tried to strike up a conversation with her, she gave short, polite answers and quickly changed the subject. It was clear she was still hurt, and Alex respected that. Instead of pushing her, he focused on being present and letting his actions speak for themselves. One afternoon, after a particularly busy day at the center, Clara found herself alone in the storage room, sorting through boxes of donated supplies. Alex walked in, carrying a stack of books someone had dropped off earlier. When he saw her struggling to lift a heavy box onto a shelf, he instinctively stepped forward to help. Their hands brushed briefly as they steadied the box together, and for a moment neither of them moved. "Thanks," Clara said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice lacked the edge it usually carried when she spoke to him. Alex nodded, sensing an opening. "You don't have to thank me," he replied. I'm here because I want to be, not because I'm trying to make up for anything. Clara looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. For weeks, she'd been holding on to her anger, using it as a shield to protect herself from getting hurt again. But standing there in that dimly lit storage room, surrounded by dusty boxes and old textbooks, she realized something. Alex wasn't the same person who'd lied to her that night at the park. Or maybe he was, but he was also so much more. Over the next few weeks, their interactions became less guarded. Clara started asking Alex questions about his life, real questions, not the polite small talk she'd used before. She learned about his late wife, how he'd raised his twins as a single parent, and the struggles he faced balancing his career with family life. In turn, Alex listened as Clara opened up about her own challenges, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over her head, dealing with judgmental comments from others, and raising her teenage daughter alone. Through these conversations, they discovered they had more in common than either of them had expected. Both were fiercely protective of their children, both valued honesty above all else, and both carried scars from past mistakes. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. One evening, as they sat side by side on the steps outside the community center, Clara turned to Alex and said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you did, the lie, I mean." Alex tensed, bracing himself for criticism. But instead of anger, her tone was thoughtful. "I get why you did it," she continued. "You wanted to connect with someone without all the baggage that comes with your name. But pretending to be someone you're not, it doesn't work." "In the long run," Alex nodded, guilt washing over him. "I know," he admitted. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I lose the chance to show you who I really am." Clara studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's try this again from scratch. No lies, no games, just use those 3 words. Just use." Felt like a lifeline to Alex. He smiled, relief flooding through him. "Deal," he said, extending his hand. Clara hesitated for a second, then shook it firmly. It was a small gesture, but it carried so much weight. For the first time since that fateful night at the park, Alex felt hope. As days turned into weeks, their relationship began to blossom. Alex introduced Clara to his world, not the glamorous one filled with fancy parties and private jets, but the everyday moments that truly mattered. He invited her and her daughter to join him and the twins for pizza nights at home. They played board games, watched movies, and laughed until their sides hurt. The kids hit it off immediately, forming a bond that felt natural and effortless. Clara, too, found herself growing closer to Alex. She admired his dedication to his family, his humility despite his success, and the way he treated everyone with respect, regardless of their background. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't constantly fighting to stay afloat, a future where she could lean on someone without fear of being let down. But rebuilding trust wasn't just about grand gestures or heartfelt conversations. It was also about the little things, remembering Clara's favorite coffee order, showing up on time for events at the community center, and listening attentively when she talked about her day. Alex paid attention to these details, knowing that consistency was key. And slowly, Clara began to believe that he was truly committed to making things right. One Saturday afternoon, as they cleaned up after a charity event at the community center, Clara paused and looked at Alex. "You've changed," she said simply. "Not just for me, for yourself, I can tell." Alex smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "I guess I had to," he replied. "Meeting you made me realize how much I was missing out on by hiding behind my title. I don't want to be that guy anymore." Clara returned his smile, and for the first time in months it reached her eyes. "Good," she said. "Because I think we can build something real here if we're both willing to put in the work." Alex nodded, determination shining in his gaze. "We will," he promised. Together. As weeks turned into months, Alex and Clara's relationship continued to grow stronger. What started as a fragile truce had blossomed into something deeper, a bond built on honesty, mutual respect, and shared values. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, lingering insecurities, and tough conversations that tested their commitment to each other. Yet, through it all, they persevered, knowing that what they were building was worth the effort. One of the biggest turning points came when Alex decided to introduce Clara to his world beyond the community center. Until now, he'd kept her at arm's length from his high-powered life, the board meetings, the networking events, the luxurious lifestyle that came with being a billionaire CEO. He knew she didn't care about money or status, but he also understood that if this relationship was going to work, she needed to see every part of him, the good, the bad, and the complicated. It started with a simple invitation. "Come with me to my company's annual gala," Alex said one evening as they sat together on his couch after dinner. Clara raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "A gala? You mean the kind where everyone wears fancy suits and dresses and talks about stocks over champagne?" Alex chuckled. "Yeah, exactly like that. But I want you there not because I need you to impress anyone, but because I want them to meet the real me. The me you've helped me become." Clara hesitated. She'd never been comfortable in such settings, and the idea of walking into a room full of wealthy executives intimidated her. But then she looked at Alex and saw the sincerity in his eyes. He wasn't asking her to play a role or pretend to be someone she wasn't. He just wanted her by his side. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "But don't expect me to wear some crazy expensive dress." The night of the gala arrived, and Clara found herself standing in front of her mirror, smoothing out the simple yet elegant dress she'd borrowed from a friend. Her teenage daughter gave her an encouraging smile. "You look great, Mom," she said. "Just be yourself. That's what he likes about you anyway." When they arrived at the venue, Clara felt a wave of nerves wash over her. The grand ballroom was filled with people dressed to the nines, sipping wine and exchanging polite small talk. But as soon as Alex took her hand and led her inside, she felt a little more at ease. He introduced her to his colleagues and business partners, not as the woman I'm seeing, but as someone who's changed my life for the better. His words made her heart swell with pride. Throughout the evening, Clara noticed how different Alex was in this setting compared to the man she'd met at the diner months ago. Gone was the polished, almost untouchable CEO. In his place was someone warm, approachable, and genuinely interested in connecting with others. Several guests complimented him on how grounded he seemed lately, and Clara couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment knowing she'd played a part in that transformation. But the highlight of the night came during Alex's speech. As he stood at the podium addressing hundreds of attendees, he paused and turned to look directly at Clara. "I owe a lot of my success to hard work and determination," he began, "but recently I've learned that true success isn't measured by titles or bank accounts. It's about the people you surround yourself with, the ones who remind you of what really matters." The room erupted in applause, but Clara barely heard it. All she could focus on was the way Alex's eyes sparkled as he spoke. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't just fitting into his world. She was helping shape it back at home. As they tucked the kids into bed later that night, Clara reflected on how far they'd come. "You know," she said softly, sitting beside Alex on the living room couch, "when we first met, I thought you were completely out of my league. Not because of your money, but because you seemed so perfect." Alex laughed. "Perfect? Hardly. If anything, I was a mess pretending to be someone I'm not. You're the one who showed me how to stop hiding." Clara smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" "We do," Alex agreed. "And I think we can keep making it better." Their newfound connection extended beyond just the two of them. Their blended families became inseparable, spending weekends exploring parks, baking cookies together, and even taking road trips to nearby towns. The kids, his twins, and her daughter formed a tight-knit group, always finding ways to include each other in their adventures. Watching them interact, Alex and Clara realized how much joy came from creating a sense of belonging for everyone involved. However, integrating their lives wasn't without its challenges. Balancing two households, managing schedules, and navigating differences in parenting styles required constant communication and compromise. There were days when exhaustion set in and tempers flared. But instead of letting disagreements drive them apart, they used those moments as opportunities to strengthen their partnership. One particularly stressful day, Alex returned home late from work, frustrated after a long meeting. Clara, who had spent hours juggling her own job and caring for the kids, snapped at him for forgetting to pick up groceries. The tension escalated quickly until Alex finally held up his hands in surrender. "You're right," he admitted. "I messed up." "Let me fix it," Clara sighed, her anger fading. "I know you're doing your best," she said. "So am I. We're learning as we go." That night, they sat down and talked things through, laying out plans to divide responsibilities more evenly. It was a small step, but it reinforced their commitment to working together as a team. They weren't just building a relationship, they were building a family. As time went on, Alex made another important decision. He realized that while his career had brought him immense success, it had also consumed much of his life. Determined to prioritize his loved ones, he began delegating more tasks at work, allowing himself to spend quality time with Clara and the kids. Weekends became sacred, reserved for family outings, movie nights, and lazy mornings where no one had to rush anywhere. Clara noticed the change and appreciated it deeply. "You're happier now," she told him one evening as they watched the sunset from his balcony. "I haven't seen you this relaxed in ages." "I feel lighter," Alex admitted. "Like I'm finally living the life I've always wanted, not the one I thought I was supposed to have." Their journey wasn't perfect, and there were still bumps along the way. But with each challenge they faced, their bond grew stronger. They learned to lean on each other, to celebrate victories big and small, and to find beauty in the everyday moments that made life meaningful. By the time summer rolled around, Alex and Clara had settled into a rhythm that worked for both of them. They weren't just surviving as a blended family, they were thriving. And though neither of them could predict what the future held, they faced it together, hand in hand, ready to take on whatever came their way. Months had passed since Alex and Clara first decided to give their relationship another chance. What began as a tentative friendship had grown into something solid, something real. They weren't just two people trying to make things work anymore. They were a team, navigating life together with all its ups and downs. The kids had fully embraced their blended family dynamic, and the household buzzed with laughter, love, and occasional chaos. But Alex knew there was still one thing left to do, the most important step of all. One crisp autumn morning, Alex woke up earlier than usual. He didn't set an alarm or rush through his routine like he normally did on busy weekdays. Instead, he took his time, sipping coffee while watching the sunrise from his balcony. His mind was racing, not with stress or deadlines, but with excitement and nerves. Today was the day he'd been planning for weeks, maybe even months. It was time to ask Clara to spend the rest of her life with him, but this wasn't going to be some grand, over-the-top proposal in front of hundreds of people. That wasn't who they were. Alex wanted it to be simple, heartfelt, and meaningful, just like their relationship. So he called the twins into his room after breakfast and shared his plan. Their eyes lit up with excitement as he explained what he needed them to do. Together, they spent the entire afternoon crafting handmade signs and practicing their lines. By the time evening rolled around, everything was ready. That night, Alex suggested taking a walk to the park where they'd first met. Clara agreed, unaware of what awaited her. As they strolled along the familiar path, the air cool and tinged with the scent of fallen leaves, Alex felt his heart pounding in his chest. The twins walked ahead of them, giggling and whispering conspiratorially. When they reached the same spot where the disastrous phone incident had occurred months ago, Alex stopped and turned to Clara. "Do you remember this place?" he asked softly, his voice filled with emotion. Clara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "How could I forget? It's where everything changed, for both of us." Alex took a deep breath. "It's also where I realized how much you mean to me, how much we mean to each other." He paused, looking into her eyes. "Clara, you've taught me what it means to live authentically, to value connection over appearances. You've made me a better person, not just for myself, but for my kids and for everyone around me." Before Clara could respond, the twins stepped forward, holding up their handmade signs. One read, "Will you marry our dad?" while the other said, "We already love you like family." Their faces were bright with anticipation, waiting for Clara's reaction. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she looked from the signs to Alex, then back to the kids. For a moment, she was speechless. Then, with a shaky laugh, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "Of course, yes." The kids cheered, throwing their arms around her as Alex pulled her into a tight embrace. In that moment, surrounded by the people who mattered most, Alex felt a sense of completeness he'd never known before. This was the life he'd always dreamed of. Even if he hadn't realized it until now, the wedding was held several months later, in the spring when the world seemed to come alive again. It wasn't a lavish affair with hundreds of guests and endless champagne toasts. Instead, it was intimate and personal, held outdoors under a canopy of blooming flowers. Friends, family, and members of the community center gathered to celebrate the union of two people who had overcome so much to find each other. As Alex stood at the altar, watching Clara walk toward him in a simple yet elegant dress, he couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. From that awkward blind date at the diner to the painful fallout at the park, every twist and turn had led them here, to this perfect, imperfect moment. When Clara reached him, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it in his, Alex whispered, "Thank you for saying yes." The ceremony was short but beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and promises to support each other no matter what. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in cheers. The twins ran up to hug them, followed closely by Clara's daughter, who grinned from ear to ear. It was clear to everyone present that this wasn't just a marriage. Between two individuals, it was the joining of two families, two hearts, and two lives. Life after the wedding continued to unfold in ways neither Alex nor Clara could have predicted. Their partnership extended beyond their home and into the community they both cared so deeply about. Inspired by Clara's dedication to helping others, Alex founded a non-profit organization aimed at supporting single parents and low-income families. Together, they organized workshops, fundraisers, and mentorship programs, using their combined resources and influence to uplift those in need. For Clara, seeing Alex use his wealth and power for good reinforced her belief in him. She often joked that marrying him was the best decision she ever made, not because of his money, but because of the man he'd become. And for Alex, having Clara by his side gave him purpose. He no longer measured success by profits or accolades. Instead, he found fulfillment in making a difference, one person at a time. Their blended family thrived too. The kids grew closer with each passing year, forming bonds that would last a lifetime. They argued sometimes, as siblings do, but their disagreements were always resolved with hugs and apologies. Weekends were spent exploring new places, baking cookies, or simply lounging around the house watching movies. It wasn't always picture perfect, but it was theirs, and that made it special. Years later, as Alex sat on the porch swing with Clara beside him, he thought about how lucky he was. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the sound of laughter drifted from inside the house where the kids were playing board games. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was exactly what he wanted it to be. You know, he said, turning to Clara with a smile, "I used to think happiness came from achievements. Big deals, fancy cars, all that stuff. But now I know it's simpler than that." Clara raised an eyebrow, curious. "Oh yeah? What is it?" "It's this," Alex replied, gesturing to the house, the kids, and finally to her. "It's being with the people you love, doing things that matter. That's what makes life worth living." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, smiling softly. "Well, Mr. CEO turned family man, I couldn't agree more." And as they sat there together, watching the stars appear one by one in the night sky, Alex knew he'd found true happiness not in wealth or status, but in the connections he'd built and the love he'd shared. It was a lesson he'd carry with him forever, reminding him that the richest life was one lived with authenticity, kindness, and an open heart.